Hey, I'm Mark,
And I'm Craig.
and this is Songwriter's Tales. And we are actually doing another artist spotlight. And Craig, Timothy Baker. Let's talk about Timothy Baker. I've got a weird connection to Timothy Baker, and we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah, it's cool one. It's a cool one. So again, on Facebook, the wonderful Facebook pasture. I saw him and I turned up the volume and I just sat. I'm a professional guitar player, as you know, Mark, and you're a professional guitar player, and I just sat there and went, "Oh my." Listen to that fellow. So we're going to find out all about his journey. And he's in Nashville now. He came from Kentucky. So we're gonna talk about that. Anyway, what do you say, Mark?
let's do it. Hey, we are back at Songwriter's Tales, and we are back with a very special guest. Craig, you and I discovered this young man separately,
Yes, we did.
and then we realized that we were both talking about the same guy, and here he is. So why don't you give the man his introductions, and let's get this rolling.
I would be happy to. Hey, man, good to see you, Timothy Baker. Good to have you, man.
Good to see y'all. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Well,
you.
Absolutely. And Timothy is sitting in Nashville right now, I believe is what you told us. And we, as Mark said, I was watching on Facebook. Mark was watching on Instagram and TikTok, and we somehow or another your name came up at the same time in one of our conversations. We said we got to talk to him. Man, this guy is just knocking our socks off. So we're glad you're here, and we got a lot to talk about, my man. Mark,
Absolutely.
why don't you start us off, brother?
Okay. I told Craig, and we kind of teased this at the opening introduction. We have kind of a strange connection. I see from your bio that you're from Hazzard, Kentucky.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Well, my dad was from right down the road from there, and my dad actually created a show called the Dukes of Hazzard, which is actually based right in Hazzard, Kentucky. So it's kind of fun. I saw that and I said, "Yeah, I knew there's a reason why I like this guy."
That is
We're almost like cousins.
That's exactly right. We could be kin. You never know. It's funny that you say that because
We might be. We might be.
it's a full circle moment for me when I tell people that I'm from Hazzard, Kentucky, or when I say it like at a gig or something. Usually people's first reaction is like the Dukes of Hazzard. And so then I've made it this spiel in my live gigs to sort of give them a little bit of history. And so like I'd heard the story about sort of how your dad came to create Hazzard County, Georgia for the show and loosely base it on Hazzard, Kentucky and stuff. And so then I talk about how in the heyday, the cast members and crew and stuff came and they were the grand marshals of the parade that year. There's some great footage that I wasn't alive then, but I've seen the YouTube videos of stuff of them coming and the folks lining the streets of Hazzard, Kentucky, and so I grew up loving the show. So it's just really cool. It's really cool.
It's cool for me too, man. That's really, really cool. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell my dad later when I'm going to talk to him this weekend, and I'm going to tell him about Hazzard is still being talked about all these years
Absolutely.
later.
Absolutely. Man.
So why don't you kind of give us a rundown of you obviously have been doing music for a long time. There's no way you're that talented and you just picked the guitar up a couple of years ago. So give us an idea of kind of where you started and your influences, and we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I'm blessed to come from a fairly musical family. My dad had some cousins that were around his age that played music and had some like family gospel groups and stuff. And my dad picked up the guitar when he was maybe 25, something like that, 30 maybe. And from the time that I was born, he was playing in some different bluegrass gospel groups in the Eastern Kentucky area, in the Hazzard area and stuff. And so I grew up around it. And so every weekend, pretty much, either Friday night singings or different churches on Sundays and stuff, I grew up in that environment, and I grew up just loving bluegrass music and gospel music. And so when I was about I was 3 years old the first time that I learned one of the songs that my dad's group sang. And so I would get up on stage. They would put me on either a milk crate or just set me like up in the pulpit where people could see me. And I would sing that song, and then I'd go back to the pew with mom and my sister. And then when I was about 5 years old, my dad just realized that me and my sister both had a knack for music. We enjoyed it, and we were interested in it. And so he stopped playing with the groups that he was in, and then just sort of we formed the Baker family. And so it was me, my dad, my sister. My mom made sure that we weren't late for church on Sunday, or at least she tried. And so then we played basically every single weekend, just about, at a different church in the area for the next 10 years, pretty much, until I was about 15. My sister went off to college, and it was harder for us to get together. But through that, I picked up the mandolin first when I was about 9 years old. And then luckily, having instruments around the house, if there was something that I wanted to play or try to learn how to play, I had access to it, so like that was a huge blessing too, that my dad, he's a Martin guitar guy. So when I wanted to learn how to play the guitar when I was 11 or 12, he showed me my chords, and then I would learn by ear mostly, trying to flat pick and stuff. And then I just moved on to different instruments, banjo, dobro, stuff like that. And that was my introduction to music, was growing up that way. And then that sort of led to just I never knew that you could do it for a job. I just thought it was something you did for fun, And so at the point that I did find out that there were people in other places that were making a living either writing songs or just playing music full time, that was the point that I got really interested and was like, okay, maybe there's something to this,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
The bluegrass influence is definitely just comes through amazingly, because that's a whole different. For those of you out that are listening to the podcast right now, if you're not a player or a picker, as we call ourselves, you're not just a guitar player, because there's a lot of styles. There's jazz, there's rock, there's shredding, there's bluegrass. There's just a strumming. So if anybody mentions bluegrass, you can just take it. You just know that is like jets. That's like flying a jet compared to a lot of music. And there's something to that. It's kind of like a brain surgery of music, in my opinion. What else you got, Mark? I know you got another question, man.
Well, let's start off. So when did you start writing songs?
Yeah, good question.
I started writing songs when I was about 16 or 17 years old. I remember I guess I'd sort of dabbled in it to an extent by taking existing melodies and then writing new lyrics to that. I was doing that when I was maybe 13 years old, something like that. And then I remember the first full song that I wrote that was actually structured like a typical country song or whatever. I was probably 16, and it just sort of happened. We were in the car somewhere, and I got a piece of paper and I started writing stuff down. And at that point, when that sort of happened, I was like, oh wow, like I didn't know that I could really do that I could form a song that just in that way. And it was around that same time that I had really started digging into the history of country music and sort of listening to some older stuff that my dad had CDs of or whatever, and I was looking at the liner notes of who wrote the songs, and I realized that the artists a lot of times weren't the ones that had written the songs that they were singing, and that opened a new door. And then I would just I would listen to I think my biggest takeaway from how songs were structured, especially in modern country music, was through a couple of the first Brad Paisley records and a couple of the first Eric Church records. I got those CDs, and I listened to those, and that was really my lesson of like, here's how commercial country songs are written, and it just helped me with structure. And so from that point on, that was kind of my bar. As I was writing songs, I was sort of tailoring them in that way. But I caught the bug, and from that point on, I would just get ideas, and I'd be on the bus on school field trips or in the car while we were going back and forth wherever. And that was when I caught the bug.
Yeah, well, you can't. Sorry, Crick. I was just going to say you can't go wrong listening to Eric Church, especially those first couple of records. The songwriting. I mean, that is an education in songwriting. Yeah. So I'm with you there.
I wanted to ask you. So you had mentioned when we did the pre-show conversation, you had mentioned something about you moved to Nashville, and I believe that was in 2018.
That's correct. And yeah.
I think you said you were mentored. Who was it? It was Roger Springer, somebody named Roger Springer, and that was your introduction to co-writing. Which let's talk about that, because this is Songwriters Tales, and there's going to be some songwriters out there. And Mark and I, we met at the Nashville Songwriters Association meeting here in Atlanta. And up until that point, I was not a co-writer. I was a solo writer, and whatever came out of my head into my pen was gospel, brother. You didn't touch it. It was like almost divine inspiration, and that was my take on. That was 30 years ago, by the way, Timothy. So I have changed quite a bit on that. You know,
a little bit.
So yeah, Mark and I have actually written for over 30 years together now. So,
we have,
and
that's so cool.
But talk about that a little bit. If there was, was that a struggle for you, or was it just absolutely like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful? How did that take place in your mind and your thoughts?
I think there was definitely a learning curve, and I feel like, as you write with different people and stuff, you're sort of learning, you're learning to read the room, and you're learning to sort of give and take. And for me, I think I didn't think too much about the fact that, like, I guess I just didn't think too much about it, because I was so caught up in the fact of like, oh, this is really cool, because I'm writing with someone who, like, I know their songs. And so I was trying to sort of, like, in a way, I was like very eager to offer up the thoughts that I had, because obviously, like, when you're writing with someone in a caliber above yours, you're like obviously wanting to try to like put your best foot forward and try to like impress if you can,
Sure.
But there was definitely this thing of like learning, I think as a writer in general, and as a co-writer especially, I tend to be the more reserved. I will like either write stuff down or type stuff down and think about it for a minute before I say something. And there are other people who tend to just be stream of consciousness or whatever. And so like getting to learn how to sort of lean on other people's strengths and maybe like, maybe my thing today, maybe the thing that I'm excelling at today is melody. And maybe I'm not getting the lyrics exactly as well as maybe Roger was that day. Then I'm going to focus on doing that to the best of my ability and let Roger kind of carry the lyric part. And maybe the next route, it's the opposite, But I think that was one of the biggest things for me of like, there definitely was a learning curve. Thinking of like, oh, well, he didn't like that line, but I thought it was pretty good. And then really, so there's a artist in Nashville named Charlie Worsham, songwriter and guitar player extraordinaire. And I saw this video one time of him where he was taking a Stephen King quote about writing. And it was, the quote was, don't be afraid to kill your darlings. Meaning like, don't be afraid to just scrap this line because there might be something else better. And I think that was one of the things that I learned early on, was that like all this stuff that I'm coming up with may not be perfect. And so it's okay to go back to the drawing board, or maybe that thing that Roger said was really good and I should just sort of default to that. And then if I think I have something better, So it was just cool to sort of be in there and kind of get to pick his brain and just see. I think I learn best by sort of sitting back and watching and then sort of assessing and then sort of letting that soak in into my own, writing and stuff. But I feel like I'm still learning from my co-writers, and I don't think we ever stop, but there was definitely a learning
No, you
curve.
don't. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say we've had a lot of songwriters and artists on the show. Recently, we had Craig Campbell, if you know Craig Campbell.
Yep.
And we
Absolutely.
were talking about how he approaches songs and everything, and everybody's different. We also had Steve Dorff on the show, and of course they're like miles apart as far as their styles and the way they approach tunes and everything. Craig was real adamant about, I just don't do songs that are just commercial. I'm not. He's not. That's not. He wants to do something that he just absolutely feels in his gut and his heart,
Right.
and his mind. And that was it was an issue he had with record labels, because they basically dictated everything that the artist is going to do. And he says, "Man, you've never even been to my house. You don't know my family. You don't know, So how are you going to tell
Right,
me to do
right.
something that I love and have a passion for?" So do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I think that I think what I've learned so far in being in Nashville, for the 8 years that I've been here, and when it comes to like writing, it is so easy to hear a song either on the radio or just in general and be like, man, like I would love to write something like that either feels that way or maybe has that same theme or whatever, but it may not be authentic. It's like I think all of us as artists struggle thinking that like maybe this thing, like trying to chase something or a trend or whatever it is, and then you realize like I'm not, like there are just certain songs that I just don't write that way, and so I think that's definitely one of those. It's a lesson that you definitely learn of like, does this song? Not every song that I sing has to necessarily apply to my life. Like I could sing as a narrator, but ultimately, like I have to stand behind the song, and if I don't stand behind either the message of the song or the vibe of the song or whatever, then I'm not going to want to, like, if that song becomes a hit and I have to sing it for the next 30 years, that's not going to be the best thing, So I've definitely learned that already of like, I have my lane, and it's cool to like try to write different songs than I'm used to. Like I enjoy that, but I know like the songs that I love the most. And so, you sort of just got to follow your North Star, find that true north and just kind of stick with that.
Good point.